Europe enters the negotiations, America steps back, and the war becomes a struggle for the future order. Ladies and gentlemen, this week may eventually be remembered not because of breakthrough on the battlefield, but because several political trends became impossible to be ignored. For more than 2 years, this war in Ukraine was largely defined by a simple structure. Russia fought the war, Ukraine resisted, America managed escalation, Europe financed consequences. Today, the architecture is changing. Europe is attempting to enter negotiation as an independent geopolitical actor. The United States is increasingly behaving as an external supervisor rather than a direct manager. Russia is trying to pull Washington back into a negotiation framework favorable for Moscow, and Ukraine is trying to prevent itself from becoming merely an object of great power bargaining. The result is a much more complex geopolitical game. And the game may determine not only the future of Ukraine, but the future structure of Europe itself. Europe's five-point ultimatum. The most important event of the week was not military, it was political. Germany, France, Britain, and Ukraine presented a five-point framework or plan for ending the war. At first glance, it appears moderate. Ceasefire, negotiation along the current front line, security guarantees, frozen Russian assets, protection of European security interests, and so on. But there is nothing attractive for Moscow except the fact of readiness to negotiation. Strategically, this proposal contains something much deeper. Europe is no longer merely reacting to American diplomacy. Europe is trying to become a negotiation center itself. Why now? Because both Trump and Putin appear increasingly unwilling to engage in direct, large-scale diplomacy under European conditions, and nature abhors a vacuum. When Washington steps back, Brussels steps forward. The problem is that Europe remains divided. E3 versus E5. Nowadays, story is not Europe versus Russia only. It is Europe versus Europe. Italy and Poland openly challenged the negotiation monopoly of Britain, France, and Germany. This may look procedural. It is not. It reveals a fundamental struggle over who will shape post-war Europe. The Europe 3 countries, E3 countries, see themselves as a natural strategic directors of the continent. Poland sees itself as a military frontier state. Italy sees itself as one of the largest economies and refuses political marginalization. Many smaller European states fear being excluded from the future arrangements. The deep issue is economic. Everyone understands that after the war comes reconstruction. After reconstruction comes trade. And after the trade comes a gradual reconfiguration of relations with Russia. And nobody wants to discover that decisions affecting their future were made without them. Why Moscow keeps invoking Anchorage? One of the most interesting themes emerging from Moscow is the repeated reference to what Russian officials call the Anchorage understandings. Many observers interpreted this simply as Russian wanting favorable terms. I think the issue is much larger. Russia wants something strategically more valuable. Russia wants America, not necessarily as an ally, but as a stakeholder. Because once Washington becomes responsible for negotiation, Washington also becomes responsible for enforcing outcomes. And that changes everything. For Moscow, direct United States involvement serves three purposes. First, it weakens European influence. Second, it transforms America into a pressure mechanism on Kyiv. Third, it creates division inside the Western coalition and world. In many ways, the Kremlin understands something many Europeans still refuse to accept. The biggest strategic opportunity for Russia today is not military, it is political fragmentation inside the West. Trump's strategic distancing. Trump's response to Zelensky's proposal for a meeting with Putin was revealing. Let them work it out themselves. That statement deserves attention because it reflects a broader strategic trend. Trump increasingly behaves as a broker rather than a patron, as a facilitator rather than a guarantor. This is a major departure from the Biden model. The White House still wants the war to end, but it increasingly wants the parties themselves to own the process. This creates anxiety in Europe because European leaders understand a simple reality. Without active American ownership, European influence becomes simultaneously more necessary and more difficult. The hoax of Washington. An interesting contradiction is emerging inside the Republican camp itself. Marco Rubio and officials around him continue using harsh language towards Russia. Kate Kellogg openly welcomed the slowdown of negotiation and argued that Ukraine is performing well militarily. Meanwhile, the Witkoff-Kushner track appears more interested in finding a negotiation framework. This division matters because it suggests that the debate inside Washington is no longer about supporting Ukraine only. The debate is about what kind of peace should emerge. And these are very different questions. The Polish ultimatum, the dispute over united UPA, Ukraine rebel army symbolism may look historical. It is not, it is geopolitical. Poland effectively issued Kyiv a political warning. Warsaw's message is simple. Support is not unconditional. Historical memory remains part of foreign policy. The significance lies not in the specific issue itself. The significance lies in demonstrating that wartime solidarity has limits. As Europe moves from emergency support toward discussions about the post-war order, national interest inevitably return. And once national interest return, political bargaining follows. The military balance between Ukraine and Russia is also a very interesting question. Military developments this week were important but not decisive. Russia continues absorbing enormous drone pressure. According to Russian figures, air defense intercepted 911 Ukrainian drones in a single day. Ukraine continues targeting logistic infrastructure connected to Crimea. Neither side appears too close to operational breakthrough at the same time, which creates the central military reality of 2026. The war increasingly resembles a contest of endurance rather than maneuver. And endurance depends less on tactics than on economics, manpower, and political cohesion. There are a lot of publication in Western mass media about the breakthrough in the front, about the recalibrating, rekeeping the initiative in the front on Ukraine hands, but there are no such signs and marks on the map. Moreover, we see the continuation of Russian offensive operation in Konstantinovka and other land directions. So we are still in the time when Ukraine has some tactical advantage in the drone, middle strike drones, and so on, but we are still far away from the real breakthrough of this war and from the real ability of Ukrainian troops to liberate occupied territories for the new real Ukrainian offensive operation. But at the same time, we have a lot of rumors on this issue behind the scenes. One of the rumors is saying that Ukraine now is the final preparation stage of a new offensive operation in Zaporizhia and Kherson direction. The goal of that operation should be to break the so-called land bridge to Crimea. Another rumors are saying that Ukrainian strikes on Crimea's bridge and these connections between the lands and the island targeted on avoiding the possible Russian offensive operation in the Zaporizhia direction. And moreover, Russia is going on to restart its offensive operation in Lugansk and Donetsk direction, and also in Zaporizhia, of course. So there are a lot of rumors, and let's see what will be in the future. On the battlefield, I will keep you informed during my blog. So don't forget to subscribe and make the like for this video. Coming back, Ukraine's manpower problem. This may be the most important long-term issue. Ukraine is now discussing higher salaries, shorter contracts, recruitment reforms, expanded foreign recruitment, and incentives for returning personnel. The most striking proposal is that up to half of assault infantry personnel could eventually be foreigners. Think about what that means. Historically, states rely heavily on foreign fighters only when domestic manpower becomes strategically constrained. This does not mean collapse, but it does mean that the demographic dimension of the war becoming increasingly important. The financial front. The numbers are revealing. Ukraine currently faces an estimated military financing gap of approximately 150 billion hryvnias. The proposed salary increase requires another 120 billion hryvnias. Together, that is roughly 270 billion hryvnias. It's almost 5 billion euros. At the same time, NATO is discussing a new 70 euro billion military support package for the next year. And the European Union has committed up to 90 billion euros in broader support mechanisms. The war is increasingly becoming a financial competition, not between Ukraine and Russia, but between coalition sustainability and economic exhaustion. The myth of Russia, or the end of the myth of Russian invasion to Europe. One of the most important statements of the week came from participants, but not from politicians, but from the NATO's supreme allied commander in Europe. General Alexis Grinkevich stated that Russia is not seeking war with NATO. This directly contradicts much of the alarmist rhetoric circulating in Europe. The significance is profound. It suggests that even inside NATO, professional military assessments may differ sustainability from political messaging. This does not mean Russia is harmless. It means threat assessments should be based on capabilities and intentions, not fear alone. For me, it's very crazy to even to listen to such statements because it's kind of political schizophrenia. I cannot to find another name for it, because from one side, the same people are saying two very antagonistic things. They are saying that Russia is exhausted and Ukraine is winning this war. And at the same time, they are saying that Russia is going on to make an invasion on Europe. How it is possible if Russia is losing the war? It's impossible. How Russia is, if Russia losing the war, how Russia is possible to step over Ukraine and to start a new war with a huge NATO and a European alliance? It's impossible. So what does it mean? It means that somebody is lying because of money and political influence and power and keeping the power in Europe, or it means somebody is lying about the real situation in Ukrainian-Russian front. Please choose your decision, friends, and please write down what are you thinking about it, And what is your explanations of such contradictory points in Europe at the same time? The bigger global picture. The Ukraine war increasingly overlaps with broader geopolitical transformation. The United States has become the world's largest oil exporter at 10.5 million barrels per day. Iran and Washington are discussing a remarkably ambitious framework peace plan that includes sanctions, relief, asset unfreezing, and regional stabilization. China remains focused on strategic competition. Europe is militarizing. The Middle East is being negotiated, and all these processes interact. Ukraine is no longer a standalone crisis. It is one front within a broader restructuring of the international system. The central question today is no longer who wins in the next battle. The real question is who will shape the peace. Europe is trying to become a geopolitical actor. America is trying to reduce direct ownership of the conflict. Russia is trying to divide the Western coalition. Ukraine is trying to preserve strategic agency. The outcome will determine much more than the future of the front line. It may determine the future balance of power across Europe for decades. And that is why the diplomatic struggle is becoming every bit as important as a military one, perhaps even more important. Thank you, friends, for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, write down your question, make a like for this video, and see you next time. Bye-bye.